Some call you Mama. Some call you Mommy. Some call you the most smartest. Some call you so funny. Some call you homework helper. Some call you higher. Some call you their hero. And also their taxi driver. Some call you Nana or Abuela or Mima. Some call you Mother. Please stop spoiling them all. Some call you a mentor. Some call you a friend. Some call you God's kindness for the mother they never had. Some call you from the beginning. Some call you much later. Some call you guardian or foster parent on paper. But paper never stopped you from showing up open-handed. You were no less the mother and the love God intended. Some call you joy, some call you graceful, some call you strength, some call you faithful, some call you constant, some call you care, some call you always, some call you there. Some call you the greatest, some call you the bomb. But I call you blessed. I call you Mom.
Now, whether this is your first time being here, maybe you're a guest, maybe you're here because of a spouse or a mother in your life, or maybe this is a place that you attend regularly, let me go ahead and say as one of the pastors here, my heart for you this morning is that you know that you are seen, that you are heard, that you are loved, that you are in a safe place. That's a big heart for me. Even if you're like, man, I don't know if I believe in this Jesus thing. Here's my personal belief. These things are found ultimately in the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ. And that's what we're celebrating, is how in this body there are women in this church who have taken that grace and mercy of Jesus and they've applied it to their lives, and God has done something with it. And so today is not just a day to celebrate mothers. As Dave said, it's a day to celebrate all women in our church. An opportunity to say, yes, God is doing something among the women in our church and doing some great things. And I know what you're sitting here thinking. The best thing we could possibly do on Mother's Day is have a young man in his 20s talk about how to be a good mother. Right? Like, obviously, that's not what some of you are like, man, that's what I'm eager for today, to have a young man tell me how to be a mother. Well, if that's your case, I'm sorry to disappoint you, because in my opinion, I don't have any voice of authority on that. But I think this is an amazing opportunity on days such as Mother's Day and Father's Day to be able to praise what God is doing in the lives of different individuals in our church. Allow them to share their story and be encouraged by it. So we started this tradition, I think last year, where on Mother's Day and Father's Day, rather than hear me speak, we invite someone up on stage and we just get to hear their story. And we do this because long ago, a guy named King Solomon wrote these powerful words in the book of Proverbs. If you wouldn't mind pulling it up on the screen. He said this: charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. And Solomon's point was that there is something divine and wonderful that happens when a woman falls in love with her Creator and takes that grace and mercy back to her home, to her jobs, to all of her relationship in life, and that God does something in that space. And so today, that's what we're going to be celebrating. Rather than hear me preach, we're going to hear from one of our own who have been walking this road with this journey with Jesus. And God has poured grace and mercy through her that has blessed others. So this morning, if you wouldn't mind welcoming Jennifer Crafton up on the stage with me this morning. Jennifer, I'm very excited for today for many reasons. One, anyone who knows you knows that you are a woman of grace and mercy who loves God and loves people. And so I'm very excited to hear your story and hear what wisdom you're going to share with everyone else. But just in case not everyone knows who you are, would you just start by introducing yourself? Maybe say how you came to be at the Bluff Church and why you still keep coming back and things like that.
Okay. I am Jennifer Crafton. I am a mom to 5 kids, 4 boys, 1 girl. Those are the ones I gave birth to, but if anybody knows me, there are lots of kids that I consider my kids. I can't take the credit of being their mom, but I love them just the same. And Marley. I started coming to the Bluff Church. It was a combination of a couple things. First, my middle son, Caden, was 5th grade, I believe, and in the fall of 2015, he was invited to Relentless by one of his friends, and he started coming in that fall. At the same time, I worked in the same office with my friend, Melissa Keith, and she kept talking about this awesome church that she went to and how I could wear jeans. And so January 24th of 2016, I came to the Bluff Church for the first time, and I've been here since. What keeps me coming back is I feel like you can learn about God in a lot of places, but the church family, the people here, they're real. They're not perfect. Nobody pretends to be perfect. I feel like I'm loved and accepted despite all of my flaws and insecurities.
Well, thank you. That is certainly something big that we try to build here, is that we're all imperfect people following a perfect God, that we're not judging anyone like that. And if you came here expecting to hear like from a perfect pastor who's going to judge you, like that's not this place and that sort of deal, and that's not this body. And we work very hard for that. And you certainly give a testimony to that with your story. You also give a testimony when you said like, hey, I've raised multiple kids. Like you work in the youth room or the youth group, the Relentless, and I know there are countless young ladies over the years who can say, man, Jennifer invested in me, they encouraged me, uplifted me, and things like that. I know many of them would give that testimony, which I know only comes from someone who has walked a journey with Jesus, that you're adamant of, I'm going to follow Jesus. And so I would love it if you would just give an opportunity to kind of share what has been your journey with Jesus been like, what the ups and downs, and what's it like, and where has it led you to today?
Okay. I did make notes only because when I start talking, sometimes I go off on complete different subjects. So I'll try to talk, but also keep myself on track. So we use the phrase "but God" a lot in this church. And years ago, I was very similar to how Stephanie shared. I never had like a huge moment. I never battled addiction, abuse, things like that was like, hey, God saved me from that. Honestly, I don't remember a time in my life I didn't know Jesus. So a little bit about my backstory. I was adopted. I was placed with my mom when I was 21 days old. My biological parents were not even from Poplar Bluff. They actually lived in South Carolina. They came to visit about a month before I was due. She happened to go into labor early. I was born here in Poplar Bluff, and they decided, we'll just stay here. So 21 days old, me and my brother that was 3 at the time were taken away for abuse and neglect, and we were placed with my parents, with my forever home. I always remember growing up that my mom said that God gave us to her and that she promised that she would raise us to know him. And she did. Every Sunday, every Wednesday, every revival, every time the church doors were open, she made sure we were there. I know everybody has an awesome mom. I have the best because she chose me. She wasn't just like, I'm having this baby. She like chose to be my mom. I grew up the baby and the only girl with 3 older brothers. And you can ask every one of them and her. I'm the favorite. And so that way I know, as a mom, you don't have to give birth to a child to love them. There's no way she could love me anymore. There are, of course, lots of times that through my life growing up, lots of valleys, lots of low points, and I know that my faith, that's where it grew. I wasn't alone. I had God through all those moments. And, I went through a lot of things that, I would never want my kids to go through. But I never look back and say, I wish that didn't happen. Because my mom also raised me to believe that everything happens for a purpose, for God's purpose. Had I not went through those things, I wouldn't be who I am. And just, I wanted to add, I do know my biological parents. I do love them, but they're not my parents. My parents raised me. And then my mom became a single mom when I was 12. And it was hard, really hard. But as I said, I've never looked back and think, I wish this wouldn't have happened.
Which is powerful. I can think about multiple times in my own life where I'm like in the middle of the storm and you're sitting there thinking, God, I do not want to be in this position right now. But I've never looked back and think, man, I'm so angry, God, that you took me through that, because I look now and see how those hard times equip me to be able to comfort others. And I know that's certainly true for you as well. That you've been able to look back and, hey, you've been able to comfort others. And you do that so often, like I said, with the youth group and other people in the church, being like a mentor to them. So since it's Mother's Day, I think it'd be an awesome opportunity to talk about family, of course. And so let's just start with some easy ones. What's maybe your favorite family tradition?
Okay. I think, again, if anybody knows me, they probably know my favorite family tradition. We have lots of family traditions, whether they're really traditional or not, but probably Christmas, anything around Christmas is my favorite time of the year. When Caleb, my eldest, was born, his first Christmas, he was only like 3 or 4 months old, and I went and bought him Christmas jammies, and he sat in his high chair while we made cookies, and then that's became a thing. And over the years, it's always been everybody gets pajamas on Christmas Eve, we make cookies. And a few years ago, we started doing matching Christmas pajamas. And when I say matching Christmas pajamas, I don't mean myself, Eric, my husband, and our 5 kids. I mean like 25 to 30 people that are my family, whether they want to be my family or not. And my kids are gracious enough to humor me with that. So every Christmas Eve, we all wear our matching Christmas pajamas and cookies. And on Facebook, it looks perfect, but I guarantee there's been at least 10 fights. And I've yelled at least 20 times. And then we have Terry, our camera person, that makes sure that I get all the pictures I want.
So whose idea was the matching pajamas then?
Mine.
Okay.
Yeah. But just to be fair, my kids actually love it, because I was working one day, the first year we decided, and somebody I worked with was like, oh, you're horrible. Why are you making your kids wear matching Christmas pajamas? I'm like, I think that they would think, what's wrong with my mom if I didn't? And even my husband, he just puts them on and smiles.
All right. So let me ask this question now. What is your maybe favorite or funniest parenting moment?
Oh, well, there's lots. Lots of, I have 5 kids over, my oldest is 21. My youngest is 11. Lots of funny moments. Some I didn't know for sure if I should share. So one, I would say probably the funniest. My oldest 3 boys were born within 3 years of each other. So they were little, I would say probably 2, 4, and 5 at the time. And I remember my mom taught me when I was growing up that if somebody tried to take me in public, don't just start screaming, because kids do that when they're in trouble. They start screaming. She said, make sure you tell them all, or start hollering, this isn't my mom, or this isn't my dad, to get people's attention. And so I'd set the boys down and told them, this is what you do. So where Harbor Freitas used to be a grocery store, and I got out of the car, and I know I had Caleb and Chase for sure. I don't know if I had Caden with me. I don't think so, because I was able to make it fast getaway. But as we're walking in the store, 1 kid on each hand, Chase starts hollering, you're not my mom, you're not my dad. And so I was like, I can't. So we left. I I don't know what we did for supper that night, but another funny story was Chloe is my youngest, and she is the only child that Eric and I have together. The 4 boys were from my first marriage. And I always worried before she started talking that she would call him Eric because that's what the boys called him. Well, I wasn't even thinking when she started calling him Babe. The first time when she was little bitty, we had her sleeping in a toddler bed in our room, and I wake up to, Babe, Babe, I want a cookie. And so, 3 o'clock in the morning, Chloe and Babe are sitting on the side of the bed eating cookies. And she went on calling him Babe for a long time. So, yeah, those are probably 2 that I know I can share.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for that. So, turning the page again, what have been some of the greatest challenges or the humblest lessons you have learned over the years of parenting?
Okay. So, first of all, I graduated high school, 5 months pregnant, and married with my first one. So becoming a teen mom and a young mom is just a complete challenge in itself. Not only was I I don't even know how to be responsible for myself. Now I have to be responsible for this little human. And then all the outside judgment, stereotypes. You're a young mom. Mm-hmm. You're going to mess this up. So of course, that was a huge challenge. I don't remember a phase of life through raising my kids that I ever felt like wasn't challenging or humbling. Another big one was 7 years and 4 kids into my first marriage. Me and my first husband separated, and that was huge because I felt like I'd failed as a mom because I didn't want my kids in a broken home, and I wanted what was best for them, and I didn't know how I could be a good mom if I couldn't give that good example. And then having a lot of kids. I mean, I have a lot of kids. That's a challenge, and I can't tell you how many times that I've had people say, do you know what caused this? Did you mean to have this many kids? And, I remember somebody once telling me at work, I said that I needed to take off early because I had just found out I was pregnant with Kason. And her response was, oh my goodness, Jennifer, what are you going to do? And it just really took me back. And I was like, well, here in 5 minutes, I'm going to lunch, and in about 5.5 months, I'm going to have a baby. Having 5 kids, like I said, it's been a lot of humbling moments. Just when you think that you have it figured out, you realize that you don't, and you probably never will. I like to think that I look at it as God chose me to be their mom, and even when I mess up, there's a reason, and so.
Yeah, you and me were just talking a minute ago right before the service over there, and we were, I think I said, it's nice where, you feel like you're growing up with your kids, you make mistakes, and you're mentally thinking, okay, with the next one, I won't make this mistake because I've learned, but then that comes around and you find every kid's different and
yes.
You're constantly learning new things and you're like, okay, so maybe I'll have this figured out by the 12th kid kind of deal.
No.
Okay, so in the beginning before I called you up here, I talked about King Solomon and what his words were of how good it was when someone who falls in love with God brings that grace and mercy back home with them and into their other relationships and things like that. And that's a big part of what we do. We want to live lives that give glory and make Jesus famous here. And so I'm kind of curious, how is your walk with Jesus, how has that impacted or influenced or spoken into your relationships with parenting and marriage and all that?
Okay. So honestly, I don't know what I would do without a relationship with Jesus. Like I said earlier, I don't remember not having a relationship but at different stages in my life, it was a different level of a relationship. Of course, it's my comfort when things don't go as planned, when I have those frequent moments of I can't do this or I've failed. And like I just said, I do have comfort knowing that God chose me to be their mom, even on the bad days, and that the not so good moment are all part of God's plan.
Yeah.
I have good thoughts and plans and ideas, but often I don't feel like I'm accomplishing what I intended to. I try to show my kids love for others by loving others, by offering forgiveness and mercy. And, I try to teach them that loving others is a choice, and that's what God wishes for us to do, is to choose to love others. It's not always easy. I don't always show that a good example. But, attending church, trying to keep my kids involved in church activities, trying to teach them that the people that we surround ourselves with are just as important as our relationship with Jesus. And then, ultimately, if God can love me and forgive me, then why or how can I not forgive somebody else?
Yeah. And you've certainly lived, I know, a testimony of that. I think about this all the time. I'm like, every time you come, you always it's like you make sure, hey, we're going to fill up this car, and so we've got an extra seat. Who are we going to invite to come with us to church? Yeah. Because you always have, your kids always have friends with us, on Sunday morning. And I'm like, man, if everyone had that mentality, I see in you guys of, okay, we're coming to church. We've got some empty seats. Who are we inviting to fill in these seats with us? I'm like, man, we would be bursting at the seams, and the whole community be changed. So I've always found that very, I've always admired that in watching your guys and your family. It's a very clear sign of man, you guys, you love God, you love people, you want to embody this, you want to show that love to others. And so, and I think that comes in large part to you and Eric as parents and leading your household. Because of that, I want to give you an opportunity as we start to close this up. I want to give you an opportunity to just two quick things. First one, give you an opportunity to brag about your family, your spouse, your kids, anything you want to say to them. Well, you got a microphone and they got a camera, and they can always look back and watch it again.
And where they can't say, oh, no, you're not. So as far as my kids, I really have good kids. I know that I don't always do the best showing them that I love them. But they are good kids. They make good choices. They're hard workers. And most importantly, every one of my kids have a relationship with Jesus. So, and as far as my husband, so I met Eric, and he was this single guy that had never been married, didn't have kids, and never even had lived, with a significant other. And he not only decided that he would love me, but to love all my kids. And I know that I could do life without him, but I don't want to do life without him. And I say it all the time. It's easy to love when you make a decision to love somebody, but I like my husband. I like being around him. I like spending time with him. Not only did he take me and 4 kids in, and shortly after we had Chloe, and then not long after that, my dad and my 2 younger siblings moved in with us for a while. And then I made the silly comment one day that I'd always wanted to go to nursing school. And he's like, well, why don't you do it? And I said, because I have 5 kids and a job. And his comment was, what am I for? And so for 2 years, he raised my 5 kids while I worked full-time and went to nursing school. So, and I could give a whole other speech on why I think my husband's wonderful. But
awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. So I know in the past 4 years, or close to 4 years now of getting to know you, you've spoken a lot of encouragement in my life. And I don't know if I ever told you that. You had this way of sometimes just saying things, and I'm like, oh man, I need to hear that. Or even coming to parenting, when I was like, hey, I'm putting on a smile, happy face. Inside, I'm screaming a little bit and a little tired and stressed. With a toddler or a little kid, you always had this way of just saying some things. I'm like, oh, okay, that was definitely from Jesus. And so I want to give you this opportunity with a platform to say anything of encouragement to some of the ladies in our church. I know there are some mothers, there are some who want to be mothers, there are some who, maybe people who aren't even listening right now in this room, I don't know. But I want to give you an opportunity to just say anything encouraging that you can to the ladies in our church, just to close out.
Okay. So everything that I just said, of course, no parent is perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect mom. And when you sit and worry, am I doing it good? Am I good enough? That's just a sign that you are a good mom because you care. No kid is perfect. Never say my child would not do that, because as soon as you do, they will. And then don't be the parent that answers the phone when the school calls and blames it on the teachers or blames it on the other adults, because your kid is going to make mistakes. And then, kind of like we've already touched base on, being a mom doesn't mean that you gave birth to that child. There's a lot of ways that you can be a mom. And just remember that God chose you to be their mom, no matter how he chose you to be their mom. If you gave birth to them, if you're their stepmother, if you adopted them, God chose you to be their mom. And then for those that are patiently or impatiently waiting to be moms, I can't say that I've been there and that I know what it was like to struggle with trying to become a mom, but just know that I'm praying with you.
Thank you. Jennifer Crafton, everyone. If you found anything that she said encouraging today, or over the years that she has been a voice of encouragement to you, please, before you leave here, just come and say an encouraging word back to her. And so let me just close out with a word of prayer this morning. Jesus, we're so grateful for the ways that you use us, especially, I know, many of the women in this church body. How you have wooed them into falling in love with you, and then encouraged them to bring that grace and mercy and love back home to their families, to their places of work, to their jobs, to their relationships, Father, and that you're always at work in the midst of this. I know, I think back in my own life, there have been numerous women who have been mentors to me, encouragers, individuals who I consider like second moms because of the impact that you allowed them to use. And so I'm so grateful for the women in our church who are taking a passionate pursuit to love God and love people. And right now, as we close out this time in worship, I pray that your Holy Spirit might just move in our midst to open up our lips to give you praise. It's in your name I pray. Amen.